Hello, and welcome back to Green TV. It's just been great getting in touch with my activist friends, still active, still very much friends from my former life. And that was doing radio shows. First Eco Talk on Air America, and then the Green Front on internet radio. Did those programs for about 10 years. And in the course of interviewing what I call the eco solutionaries, I got to meet some wonderful people who informed me and inspired me along the way. So getting to do television, which I love because it allows me to see all of you beautiful people. I, as you two, I'm going to introduce you in a moment, have so much passion for the cause of saving something, the future for our children, grandchildren. Roger and Susan Shamel, I know you are not only parents, but grandparents, but we're here to talk about something very serious. And that is that Harvard announced last week that it is going to begin, maybe the operative word is begin, divesting from fossil fuels. And the first person I thought of was you, Roger. And
thank you.
Just a bit of background, Roger graduated with a master's in organic chemistry from Harvard, got an MBA, which is why he has the right to keep poking them in the side. And he's done that very, very successfully, finally some results. 40 years of management consulting. We can skip all those companies because you did a great job there. But what I'm interested is about the time I met you over a decade ago, when you and Susan started GWEN, or Global Warming Education Network. Susan is very much a part of your coupling and your activism. And Susan is a physical therapist, or was a physical therapist, maybe retired now, but a very active grandmother, I know that. And most importantly to this conversation, a very, very committed climate activist. Sometimes I say, yes, when people say you're so committed, I say, and I may end up committed if we don't get some results here soon. So people who wake up every day and think we're going to make this world a better place, we're going to somehow change minds and hearts, they're sometimes thought to be the ones who are dealing with depressing news and gloom and doom. And it's the opposite, because who more than activists, especially we climate activists, have hope for the future. So with that bit of background, I'll start with Roger, only because this is a divestment story, but Susan has been right there by his side. And would you say you're a full-time climate activist now, besides being a grandma? Susan?
Well, no, I'm definitely not a full-time climate activist at this point.
Well,
I've kind of backed away from a lot of things because I feel they're not working, you know.
Well, you both have done a lot of work.
So we're trying to be more strategic about what we're doing.
And I should say you've been very active in the state of Massachusetts.
So now we're living in New Hampshire, and I've got myself involved in the politics. Not that climate change is political, but it's been politicized, and we have to elect people who recognize this fact. And right now our governor and our state legislature does not, even though at the federal level we have people that do. So it's very interesting here.
That's a good way to put it. Roger, you're smiling. Is that since last Thursday when the announcement came? And by the way, did you know that Harvard was going to be making the announcement that they are going to be divesting their portfolio from fossil fuels?
Well, I didn't know right up to the minute, but I knew that it was in the works. And just to correct the record, I don't know if you said at the beginning that I have a master's in organic chemistry from Harvard, but that's from Ohio State. And the MBA is from Harvard.
Okay, sorry, I read that too quickly. It's
no problem.
Little letters on my phone because Susan texted. Thank you for correcting that. My eyes ain't so good anymore, guys.
You just want to keep the record straight. And in that
Absolutely.
vein, I want to point out that the announcement that came out from Larry Bacow on Thursday was really not about divestment. The New York Times got it right in their headline when they said, Harvard says it will not invest in fossil fuels. And I don't want to make a big deal about that, but just again, to keep the record straight, Larry wrote an email that was titled Climate Change, an Update on Harvard Action. And I've been in touch with him on and off by email for a couple of years. And
well, since the get-go, since he became president.
So you're talking about the president of Harvard University, Larry.
Right.
Yes. And, he doesn't take any marching orders from me, but he does take suggestions, for which I give him a lot of credit. I'm an alum and been in the consulting business, as you said, for many decades. And I came to trying to influence Harvard after Susan and I tried just about everything else as climate activists kind of going by the book at first. We shrunk our own carbon footprint, and then we started doing community organizing with the Global Warming Education Network, and we tried to raise the volume by doing polar plunges into Walden Pond in Concord, Massachusetts in December. And that got us 10 seconds on the evening news. And we thought, gee, then the big thing we did, or a couple big things, was to organize a revolutionary climate rally at the Old North Bridge in Concord at Minuteman National Park. And we worked for many months. We had 40 towns there and a huge program. We had Bill McKibben's mother there because she lived in Lexington. And we thought, this is really going to change the world. And that didn't even make it into the Boston Globe. So
I can relate. All these tipping points we thought for sure. Right. Now it's going to change when Al Gore's movie came out in 2006.
Right. That's kind of what got us started, because I know how to read charts, and he had some good charts in that movie. So we decided to organize things in Washington, D.C. To try and get more leverage. This would be part of going to Washington, D.C. to see our elected officials, who basically said, we hear you and we're doing everything we can, and be patient. And we were saying, well, you're not doing enough. So we organized several rallies in front of the White House. We had a big one that we reserved Lafayette Park, and then the other big organizations like Greenpeace said, oh, can we share your permit? And we said, sure. And that was the 10-10-10 rally, I think, in 2010. And that didn't lead to much. And we got arrested with Bill McKibben at the White House 10 years ago. And so after, thinking about how can we become more effective, I thought, well, Harvard always talks about training leaders. And in fact, the Harvard Business School motto is to educate leaders who make a difference in the world. And other than having the business school on my resume, I'd never really worked my Harvard connections. So I thought, there's this time to maybe use that if I can. And the concept of leading from below occurred to me, where you don't have to be running something to have an influence. And I give Larry Becko a lot of credit for listening. I mean, he's got a huge job to run a university, and the fact that he'll occasionally reply to an email just gives me tremendous respect for him. And I started off trying to influence the business school. That's where I graduated from. So this goes back to 2008. Harvard Business School was having its centennial celebration, and I was interested in attending. So I looked at the planned program, and there was nothing about climate change. 2 years after Al Gore came out with his movie.
Sounds like network news. No programming on the
right. So I said to myself, well, this is just wrong. You've got to cover the most important thing happening on the planet. So I wrote to them, and sure enough, they put somebody on the program. Kleiner Perkins had has a retired partner, Jack Doerr, who has spoken up about climate change. And so I thought, gee, I did make a difference by speaking up, and that provided some encouragement for this strategy. So then I started working with the Harvard Business School's Business and Environment Initiative, where I got to know the director and again voiced my concern that climate was a big deal. And when I first went in to meet with them, they had a brochure, and I remember climate change was kind of at the same level of other things to worry about in the environment. There was water pollution and air pollution and climate change. And I said, wait a minute, you've got to change that. Climate change is like the overarching thing that's going to affect air and water and a million other things. And
don't forget Superfunds. The Republicans, especially,
right.
Mark Pruitt, really big on that. It's like anything but touching actually what we can do and our unsustainable lifestyle in the States.
Exactly.
And they always said, sorry to interrupt, but it just killed me when every time Trump, sorry to bring him up, I'm for clean air and water, but they never, none of them, the Republican politicians, ever would add climate change, as if they got a memo, as if they were asked to do that or told to do that. You notice
Right.
that too? You notice that too. Yeah. Leave the most
So-
important part out, by all means. Go ahead.
So
Sorry.
as part of that, my program, I interviewed a couple dozen students and administrators and faculty members at Harvard Business School, and I realized that there was inappropriate amount of attention being devoted to climate change. And with encouragement from me, the Business and Environment Initiative eventually started a program to go around the country to major cities to have climate programs to educate alumni about what was happening. And they also started making sure that students understood climate change, because I interviewed students at the business school back then who were not exposed to climate change and still thought it was a myth or something. So they started to make sure that every student knew about climate change. And I'm not one to want to worry about being in the limelight. So you won't find my name anywhere in any of this stuff.
But I knew how active you've been. Yeah.
That's fine with me. I want to make a difference in the world. And if nobody cares about who gets credit, you can get a lot more done.
We also got the alumni at the reunion parties to address climate change with forums.
I could just see the cocktail party. Everyone's chit-chatting. My grandchildren want to see pictures. Here's our dog. And you guys walk up and because
Right.
Yeah, it was kind of like that.
Susan makes a good point. I've been on the reunion committee for my class of 74 at the business school for decades. So a couple of reunions ago, I suggested, well, let's have a program about climate change. And the rest of the committee says, oh, gee, Roger, that's such a downer. We don't want to come back and talk about climate change. There are other forums for that. And I complained about having something to the people running the overall reunion program. And sure enough, they decided to have the first ever climate panel and invited me to be a member along with 3 or 4 other alumni. And lo and behold, it was a huge success. The room was overflowing. They had to have a backup room for people to listen to the AV. And then they started to see, oh, maybe it's okay to start talking about this now. And then at my last reunion, which was 2019, it happened to be on a Friday, and Greta had started Fridays for the Future around that time. So we decided to organize the first ever Friday for the Future rally at the business school. And we had about 50 people show up. I was writing articles at that time and continued to do so to put in the Harbus, the Harvard Business School newspaper. So just in any way that I can, without rocking the boat too much, to be nice about it, I'm trying to push Harvard to do things that make me proud to be an alum, and that I think will make them proud to do what they have done, or to have done what they did. And after that success at the business school, I decided, well, why don't I move this focus to more of the university? And in fact, I had an influence there because the business school decided to do a climate week about the time New York City was doing a climate week. And the university decided to take over Climate Week and make it a university-wide thing. So that was something that I had pushed and endorsed, and that happened.
What were you talking about, Roger, at this point?
Well, they had a week of different programs, and they were talking about all the usual things, what can be done, and of course, what Harvard was doing. And the funny thing is they dropped Climate Week the following year, and it had influenced applicant to the business school to attend on the basis of what Harvard was doing. So when he got there and there wasn't a Climate Week, he got upset and started contacting the administration and what's going on here. And so that it kind of started the ball rolling, or a domino effect that I think has continued to help influence Harvard to do the right thing.
Now,
so
I know
that's just to finish up. The real headline for Harvard is that they did another thing I've been suggesting, which was to just write a letter to all of the Harvard community to say that climate change is real and serious, and you might want to do something about it, so that we can get everybody on board with the basic facts. And I said that because I would meet alumni who were classmates or other alumni who were still confused or misinformed about climate and thinking that it was some type of a hoax still.
And you can't get a better education, presumably, than at Harvard University. So what does that say about the rest? Yeah.
So if these smart, well-educated people are confused about climate and it's an existential issue for the world, Harvard having a large bully pulpit should be speaking up to clarify what's happening and encourage alumni to do more.
And I understand that you got an agreement to start mentioning this in letters, not only to faculty, staff at Harvard, but also their donors. Do you think that was a big reason or a part of the reason that they were so slow to respond to this, given what you said is true, that is the biggest existential threat? This is one of the finest universities in the country, world, you name it. And what's wrong with this picture?
Well, it was interesting. In my interviews, I think it came out there are a lot of, I'll call them psychological or human nature issues involved in climate change. There's a tendency for people to have willful ignorance and to have fear of stepping outside the normal politically correct things to do. There's a lot of tribalism. So one professor told me when I urged him to get Harvard leading, he said, well, what if we lead and nobody follows? I thought, oh yeah, that could be a little embarrassing. And another person told me, well, we don't want to upset any alumni. And there's always, earlier it was more of an issue that you don't want to say anything about a political or religious issue because those are personal decisions. And I would point out that climate change is about physics and chemistry. It's not political or religious. It's been politicized by the people who want to put it off limits. So,
and I live in Texas now. There is still that kind of thinking, and it drives us nuts, of course, because it's like they won. They did manage to politicize it and slow things down for at least a decade.
Right, and that's still happening. It bothered me that it was happening among Harvard alumni, but just as a local example, Susan and I were tabling just to keep our fingers or feet on the ground at a local state fair, and we talked to people there, and the kids who were down at the other end of the barn near the GOP table said, well, we don't believe in climate change. And I thought, well, you need to.
I don't believe in Santa Claus either.
Right. I don't believe in gravity, but if I drop things, they keep falling. So
and then there's COVID. Don't get me started.
Yeah, I'm kind of jumping from the elite to the little kids in a local farm fair, but the point is that there's still a lot of misunderstanding. And if there's one thing that we should get straight about climate change, it's the basic facts of the science. We're headed in a bad direction. We can do things about it, and pretending that it's not serious or ignoring it or even just letting people go along without being concerned about it is simply wrong. And I hate to think of the day when people wake up and say, oh, gee, we thought it was a joke. Why didn't somebody tell us?
I think that started to happen with Hurricane Ida, for the first time, seeing not only the people who said we've never seen this before, their lives shattered, but the hosts and the anchors saying things like apocalyptic and this is the new normal and all that. That felt like a tipping point, at least in media, which is what I follow.
Right. Mother Nature was a big help with the fires and floods, and they were all over the world. You remember Germany and China, and the landslides and fires in California were on the news every night.
Mother Nature is neither a Republican or Democrat, and she debunked.
Right. And Harvard used to say, I had a list of 12 things I've suggested that Harvard do. And when I went to my earlier reunions, I would hear faculty members say, you folks don't need to worry about climate change, and your grandkids don't need to worry. And I'm thinking, gee, that's not a good message to send out. So when there's a fire in California, I look up on the directory of Harvard alumni and I point out there were 24 Harvard alumni in Lake Tahoe who evacuated, and they were affected. And, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So
tip of the melting iceberg. Yeah.
I said, everybody. Stop telling people not to worry, number one. And my other campaign that I'm working on is to try and get Harvard to lead in ending or not resuming alumni travels for fun, because they've interrupted them due to COVID. But to encourage people who can travel if they want to on their own or with a travel agency to say to alumni, hey, join our trip to Timbuktu and we'll have a professor along to explain everything. And that's all great, but you can do that with modern video technology without ever leaving home. And you could even combine it with an event on campus to have cocktails and a professor showing a video so that you could experience Timbuktu without ever leaving Boston or Cambridge. And so I'm encouraging Harvard to show its leadership by being the first university to truncate alumni travels, at least until we have electric airplanes in another couple of decades.
By the way, my husband gets on Peloton and goes to Sardinia, the south of France, and no emissions free, even though we do have electric cars. There's virtually, it's not the same, but now that we know what we know, we just can't be flying around. And Susan, you'll be happy to know, we stopped planning vacations that involve flying, but there is family on either coast. So what do you do about that? We live in the middle of the country.
Right. It's just sending the wrong message that it's okay to do this. And our Harvard people are exempt from being responsible. So there's pushback on that because I'm told people are going to travel, people love to travel, but that doesn't mean that Harvard needs to promote the travel.
Roger, you should mention the new vice provost too of climate and sustainability. Harvard was really afraid to use the words climate. They might use the word sustainability, but not climate. But now they've broken that as well.
That's right.
Ridiculous, tiptoeing around the
tiptoeing around, but now it's okay to have climate in a title. So they've just appointed the first ever Harvard Vice Provost for Climate and Sustainability. And this gentleman, Jim Stock, will be responsible for coordinating what's going on at all the different Harvard schools and to work with alumni and the whole 400,000 person strong Harvard community to get people working to do what they can. And that's another thing I've been promoting, that Harvard should have a climate initiative to knit together all the silos at the business school, the law school, the School of Public Health, and so on, to get them all working together. You know, like Harvard's like you need a defibrillator to get that heart pumping with one synchronized stroke to address this problem. And so,
not unique to Harvard, by the way, herding cats, trying to get all the parties, interested parties. Although I would argue, and I'm sure you'd agree, we're all stakeholders in this one. Only those who breathe or drink, as I say.
Right. So that was really the news, that first of all, that Larry wrote this letter to the whole community, that he've appointed this new vice provost for climate and sustainability. And he just mentioned, by the way, and this only reaffirmed what had come out months ago, Harvard does not plan to invest any further in fossil fuels. And as these investments run out or we're able to play them out, we'll not renew them. So it wasn't really divestment, but again, I don't blame the divestment crew for claiming victory. You know, there comes a time.
There's very few. We need all the
right. Okay, victory. So that's fine. They deserve it. And Bill McKibben,
the news played it that way, and that felt good. That mainstream media. Yep.
Bill McKibben's been promoting that, and we're big fans of Bill, so I don't blame him for taking a victory lap.
And we need to get him on green TV. That's where I am now. So, how many other universities have done similar things? I know, you know, you've been very active with Harvard, and I think you would like to, now that Harvard has done the right thing, get the message out to other colleges and universities around the country. Are there others that have taken this leap?
Yes, I don't have the list in my head or handy, but there are several hundred schools, and I can't name them all, but I would like to try and get all the other Ivy League schools as a start to do this, because they tend to have more influence. So I'm in touch with people at Princeton and other schools to try and get them on board to do this.
And I know that there are some cities, municipalities that have passed similar measures. But is it true that Maine, the state of Maine, has become the first state to make it law to divest from fossil fuels?
I don't know. Have you heard that, Susan?
Yeah, I think I heard something about that. Yeah,
Well,
I
good for Maine,
did. And I was shocked. Yes, because
a little state of Maine.
Maine can go both ways with a lot of things, but Unity in Maine was the first college to divest, I think, from fossil fuels. So they have some progressive people there. Of course, Maine has a lot of wood, so they figure they can just burn their forests.
No problem. No problem with that.
So, I don't know how that'll work. But yeah, Roger's goal would be for all universities to, bite the bullet and form all their alumni, because, we keep hoping the students are going to do it, but it's too late for the students. We need the people with money, the people, the alumni to come forth and start working on it. People our age or middle-aged people with
Absolutely.
children. So his goal would be to get all universities to send a letter saying, this is real, this is serious. It's not a political issue, it's science. We've got to get on board. You've got to do whatever you can. So it becomes mainstream to do it, and if they offend their Republican donors, so what? Who cares,
Offend the dinosaurs. That's what kills me about the CNNs for so long. I was told from an insider that the reason they didn't do more climate coverage was they didn't want to alienate those viewers who went between Fox and CNN. I said, okay,
exactly.
So the country and the world should be in the dark because of these dinosaurs. Really?
Well, exactly. And at Harvard, even the guy who was for a while head of the environmental activities, who was a geologist, was saying, well, we can't take sides. Well, it's not a side when it's science. And it was just shocking to us that this guy who's still, I think, in charge of programs, right, Roger, would say that, but he's gotten a little better. But it was just shocking to us.
Shocking is what we live with.
Yeah, he's gotten better. And there are other Harvard alumni who are doing a lot. Bill Gates just came out with his book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. And we mentioned Bill McKibben before, and Mike Bloomberg gave 50 million to the Sierra Club to end coal, and there are many others. And what we're trying to do is amplify the people who speak the truth about climate change, and to let the people who don't yet get it get up to speed with us so that they can also get on board and help to solve this problem, or at least to stem it.
Well, I hope you'll both promote Green TV then, because that's why I'm doing this. We need to meet the solutionaries, people like you who are putting time in and effort on, whatever your area of interest is, the planet, the future, grandchildren, because look at what mainstream network news left a void. Until recently, very recently, they really didn't mention it much. And now they're talking about climate change, and even in real time during the hurricanes and the tornadoes and the fires and the floods. But they always stop even when, Michael Mann, who's already been on Green TV, says we have urgency, but we have agency. And then they go to a commercial before anybody talks about, okay, we must change and we must act. But what do we do? I know, because we live in this stuff. But I have many friends who still don't know and say if it wasn't for being, associated with me, they wouldn't know half of what they know about climate change. And that's the part that's missing. And till the networks get around to thinking that solutions is worth 1 hour a week, maybe on,
at least
planetary pickle, maybe 2 hours on the weekend. Not
right.
I can't sit still because there's too much happening. And I just want to show them what they're missing, frankly. They think they're covering it by mentioning it, or in the middle of a storm, when they're meteorologists, this is climate change. Okay, go to commercial, and then notice we haven't heard about it, and think of the poor thousands and thousands of people left behind. I have friends who lost their homes in fires because I'm from California. And that's what I think about these people who they might have even voted Republican or for Trump. They don't even know what hit them. And does climate change ever come up? And then, so what do we do with the fact that, Ida, I watch a lot of this extreme weather, and I feel bad for the people. This time I really was like right there with them, because this is devastating. It looks like an atomic bomb went off, not just in Louisiana, not just in New Jersey. So many of those spots. And once the camera crews leave, they're still left with nothing. And I mean nothing, right?
Well, yeah, people in Vermont are still suffering from Irene, which was over 10 years ago. It's the mold. You get the mold in your house and you can't get rid of it, and you're not getting funding to help you. And
it was hot down there and no air conditioning. You can just, it's a nightmare. I
know. I'm sure there's many more deaths than we realize too, or many more illnesses, or many more things that are going to be associated with Ida down the road that we're not going to hear about, you know.
You know what? I live in Austin, so I was here for snowpocalypse, and there were many more deaths than they first thought. And poor people who didn't have enough money to get a heater in their RV, and a young child died. This is life and death. And it just, like Houston, you know, not too far from me, there are still people out of their homes from Hurricane Harvey. And
I'm sure.
I just, you know, we can't reach everybody and we can't change minds, but Mother Nature is doing what we have not been able to. That's the good and the bad news. The good news is people are waking up to smell the carbon. The bad news, it's late in the game. And what do we do now other than panic? Because panic is not inappropriate, actually. So that's why this is a plug for Green TV. Shameless, but spread the word, because I don't have a marketing budget or a marketing team, but I know this is what we need, and we hope to grow our programming to more than an interview a day and have live streaming, you know, several hours a day and grow from there, because why the heck not, given what's going on. I just want to, before we close, because we could go on, ask you, Susan, you're both grandparents, but just on a personal level, how do you do? I just have one child. She's 26 and just got engaged. So I'm already starting to look forward to being a grandmother, you know, tinged with a lot of fear and sadness. How many grandkids do you guys have? And how do you feel when you look them in the eyes and you know what's going on and what's coming?
I basically have to separate them. I have to cut my brain in half. So I can't think about climate change when I look at them.
I wish I had that ability.
My oldest granddaughter was probably 4 or 5 when she said she didn't want to hear about global warming anymore. She's
in my house is banned. They hear way too much.
She's a senior in high school now. I basically, I just have to separate myself. My youngest daughter will tell me I'm too pessimistic. In fact, my middle daughter sent me a positive calendar. I'm supposed to think of something positive every day, you know, and I say I'm being realistic. So,
well, let me jump in to say too, that I look at them, our youngest granddaughter is 2.
3.
3.
3.
And
goes fast, I know.
It goes fast, and she is as sweet as can be, and her older brother is also a sweet little boy. And I just put myself in their shoes. They know so little about anything really yet, and they know nothing about climate change. And I just feel so bad for them, and I extend that to every other person who doesn't understand. Because I don't want this to sound like a selfish thing that we're doing it for our grandkids or our kids. It's because of the feeling we have for everybody who doesn't get it, waking up late. And I had that feeling. You mentioned Ida, and when Ida was first announced, I looked at the storm track, and there was a headline that it was going to be the strongest storm to hit Louisiana in, I don't know, 150 years. And the storm track went all the way up the East Coast and right to New Hampshire, where we live. And I had this feeling, oh my God, excuse the French, what if that really pans out and we have another hurricane that blows in the house here? And I had this terrible feeling of helplessness. And the point of this is we can't react when the storms are forming in the Gulf. We have to react now. We have to understand the science and connect the dots. And that's why this is such a big problem, because it's human nature. We didn't evolve, let's say, to have problems that are huge that we can't perceive or that are in the distant future. So I really think there should be more involvement of psychologists to help frame the message to people in a way that can get through to people that it's a special type of problem. The fossil fuel industry has done this, I'm sure. They've hired industrial strength psychologists. And there was a famous ad that ExxonMobil did that said, "Who told you to worry about climate change? Chicken Little?" You know, a very simple, short message, but it sends the message to everybody that this is silliness. You're all Chicken Little.
Guess what? How ironic is that? The sky is falling. The atmosphere is collapsing.
Exactly. So we need those psychologists to work for our side.
Well, the fossil fuel industry hired the tobacco.
Same crowd.
That's messengers to, you know,
same playbook.
Pretend it's not happening. So. Yeah.
Yeah, as Michael Mann mentioned earlier, it's denial, and then moving on to discouragement and all the D words that try and get people to be ineffective. And that's what we need to fight with the loud voice of universities like Harvard to speak out as they've done. And so we're celebrating here and hoping we can have more influence to have Harvard and other universities get the word out about the truth, the seriousness, and to motivate alumni to do what they can. Because just on one final note from me, I did a quick calculation as a consultant about the potential strength of Harvard alumni versus Harvard students. And they're about 10 times as many alumni as students. So that's number one. I figure on average, the typical alum is probably got 1,000 times or maybe 100 times order of magnitude the financial resources. So if you just multiply the 10 by 100, you've got 1,000 times greater impact among alumni. And that's the force that could be tapped and should be tapped to work to solve this problem that we all face.
Absolutely. And do you know that Bill McKibben has just launched with a couple of other people a movement called Third Act? And it's
actually, I was a little upset about that because every single environmental meeting I go to or political meeting anywhere in the burbs is all us old people. And we're always like, where are the young people? Why aren't they doing anything? So, he's in an environment with Middlebury students. But quite frankly, what I'm seeing, having been in the burbs in Boston and here, it's us old people who are out there. I mean, we have a Fridays for the Future rally every week in this town, and it's 4 of us, seniors that are out there holding our signs.
Yeah, you're not old. You're not old. We're not old. Our passion fuels us, right? We have a purpose, a reason to get up every day.
Thank you to Greta. Greta got the young people moving, and good for her. And our hats off to you too, Betsy, for all you've done and your persistence to do what you've been doing all this time. So thank you.
Long, lonely, expensive uphill battle, but like you are disappointed in your, university. I've been very disappointed, deeply disappointed, and a few other words, D words, and then some, with my industry, broadcast news, and that they're not news leaders when it comes to this stuff, and there is a blind spot, and there is a green bias, and I've been out to people say, well, what do you expect, Betsy? There's, and there still are fossil fuel ads in between the hurricane coverage. They had American Petroleum ads, and you can tell they're getting nervous because they're running more of those ads. But why do the television networks let that happen? I mean, talk about tone deaf.
And we only watch PBS News, and even on that, we're like shaking our heads, like, "Come on, Jody, talk about climate change." And they'll just move from the floods to the hurricanes to, it's like, why don't they just call this climate change news? And it's never like, what can you do about it? They might say some scientists, even on there, NPR, some scientists or the environmentalists are objecting to this. Well, it should be all of us. I mean, if I call a politician's office and they say, well, we understand you're passionate about your issue. Yeah! I really lose it. I'm like, you think this is my issue? I'm going to be dead. How old are you?
I love you. I love you guys. That's what CNN told me. I got several meetings. I even got them to let me submit a proposal called Meet the Solutionaries. It was detailed. It was colorful. All the people across the country doing wonderful things. I thought, if Kamau Bell can do United Shades of America on racism, how about environmentalism? And they acknowledged it was a great proposal and that I had a lot of experience, but they said, we just don't think our viewers would be interested in a 6-part series on environment. Well, I wasn't even just climate, because I do more than climate too, but it's the mother of all eco challenges, of course. We just don't think our viewers would be interested in a 6-episode series. And I said, really? How do you know that? My radio show was popular, very popular on Air America, 40,000 listeners. I was on right before Rachel Maddow. She managed to go from radio to TV. And then what they say when they politely turned me down, we really admire your passion. And I've come to say, like, that's not what I want to hear at all, right? I know I'm passionate. That's obvious. I say, well, guess what? My passion stems from knowledge. It's what I know. And I don't know if you guys don't know what you don't know, or you don't want your viewers to see it. And so I'm probably not going to get too many email responses, because CNN, NBC, MSNBC, I've told them basically that it's a dereliction of duty to not be covering this most important news. And now it's kind of a form of greenwashing, because they think they are, because they're mentioning it.
I once asked a religious leader, why aren't you trying to protect God's creation? It was with Interfaith Power and Light. And basically what he told me,
my friend.
What?
Sally Bingham. We shared an office together.
Yeah. Well, it was the guy before her. I can't remember There
Oh,
was a
yes.
guy who was serving before her. What he said to me is basically when people come to church, they want to hear a positive message. They don't want to hear something like this.
Are you thinking of Jim Hall? He was one of the
Yeah,
ones. Yeah.
maybe. And it's the news, you know, that's on the news too. People want something positive, or like Fox News, because it's outrageous. They
Yeah.
don't want to hear the
Well,
truth is terrible. You know, you don't want to hear it.
Okay, here's one more thing I'm venting because I've got fellow activists, okay, because these things drive me nuts. When some people say to me, well, Betsy, people want to just escape when they get home and watch the news. They don't want to, or I'm sorry, watch not the news, watch entertainment, check out, zombie out or whatever. I say that would be okay if we were learning about it every day, how we're going to stop this freight train.
That's right.
But we're not. Who is telling adults? The kids are learning about it in school now. We didn't when we were in school, but we can't wait for the kids to grow up and become journalists and lawyers and doctors and engineers, right? We have a quickly closing window. So that's
after meeting these middle schoolers or high schoolers, whatever they were at the county fair, I'm wondering if the kids are learning about it in school in New Hampshire or not, or we just kind of.
Well, it's never going to be enough, but it's not okay for adults, parents, grandparents to dump it on the next generation. If we don't even try to start shoveling the, out of the pile, shame on us, especially for people, who are retiring and have time and have money, frankly, and that's what Greta and gang are screaming at us. They do everything, everything, so we can stay in school and hope to have a future to come out to, not too different from what you were trying to tell Harvard. Yeah. What's the point of getting the best education in the world if there's not going to be a world that we can thrive in and barely survive, maybe?
Right, and you raise an excellent point about having the time and the money. If you think of somebody who's out of a job or homeless, or maybe they're just working hard 80 hours a week to make ends meet and take care of their kids, they don't have time to worry about climate change. They barely have time to get the kids on the bus in the morning and go to work. So it's really the elites of the world who are, riding relatively high and have time for leisure and bucket list travel and what have you. Those are the people who have the responsibility and the time and the resources to really tackle the problem. And that's why it's so ironic that Harvard would at one time, with some professors, tell the elites not to worry about this. It's basically on our shoulders to fix it. And I hate to think that if we have lookouts in society, like you and the other people you're interviewing and Susan and myself, some of us can see ahead to what's happening because we understand and respect science.
And it's a mixed blessing to see the house burning when everybody
right, we're the lookout. And if we don't get the message across that, the invading armies are coming, suit up or, prepare the boiling oil, we failed at our job. Even if the people we're trying to alert resist, they still are going to thank us at the end of the day. I hope, or it doesn't really matter. I'm not looking for that, thank you. But at least we'll feel good that we did our job to basically help preserve a livable climate on planet Earth. Because as we all know, there's no planet B, and there's a long way to go to try and find anything better than what we have. So for heaven's sake, let's preserve it. And just as the three churches just recently all decided to work together on climate, we want all the universities to work together to educate their alumni that climate change is real, it's serious, and you can do something about it, but you have to act. You have to put your time and treasure into fighting this battle, and that's what we're all about. I
want to thank you on behalf of everybody who should thank you.
Thank you.
And Roger Shamel, right? that's the right way to say
Shamel.
it. Yeah, it's funny because I in my mind it's Shamel, and I know it's not because I interviewed you 10 years ago and you corrected me, but it doesn't matter on Facebook and all that.
No.
And it doesn't matter how you pronounce it, any way you spell it. We got to wake up and smell the carbon and get off our gases. And by the way, just one 9/11 note that occurred to me as I was watching yesterday, even though I wasn't sure I was going to be strong enough with all the, the earthquake in Haiti and then the hurricanes, and it's just like nonstop. Afghanistan, like, do I have any sadness, in my bank account? Is there any place for more? I'm not sure, but I did watch it. And everyone was talking about how 20 years has gone by in a blink of an eye. And we can all remember where we were and even get goosebumps thinking about it, right? My daughter was 6. We have
Wow.
to cut our emissions in half in less than a decade. Think about that and think
Right.
about how we're still spewing more emissions than we're taking out. Okay, that is mission impossible. And I will bet, because I have bet 25 years of my life, that if we don't have programming on, not just 1 hour a week and not just on one network, but pretty much everywhere, focus on how to do that, how we're going to get there, we will fail. I mean, we may fail anyway, but we should at least try. And people do not know what to do. I live in Texas. I could tell you stories, maybe next time. So that's why I believe in this. That's why I'm doing this again, my own time and dime, because you guys inform and inspire me. You did then and you still do. And it's the same, only a lot more urgent. So thank you for taking time
Thank
away
you.
from your family. And I just want, on this note, say, I just got a note from DR Tucker, our friend who introduced us, who is
good.
on top of climate change, even more than I am, if that's possible. He just sent a little blurb. Tropical storm Nicholas is forming over the Gulf of Mexico, aiming for Texas. I mean, I don't know what happened to Larry, and there was a Mindy or something. Didn't hear about those other
Right.
than when they were forming, but it's like the hits just keep on coming, and they're going to get bigger and bigger. And what I don't want anyone to say is, but you know they will. Why didn't you tell us?
Right. Well,
Didn't
thank
know.
you, Betsy, again for all you've done. Keep up the good work, and we'll
Yeah,
look forward to
great
seeing
that
you.
you've got a forum, and I hope it grows and grows and grows.
Thank you. It's going to have to be organically, again, no marketing budget. So let's
Yeah.
make it go in viral. Thank you, guys.
Okay, great. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Enjoy your grandkids.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Ciao.